the thing that's in a way to truly perceiving this permanently is just, the nitty gritty stuff of the relationship with our parents, or this healing, that's actually in the way, and our normal day-to-day relationships, or our alignment in our day-to-day actions, how we talk to our children, how we do at work, the type of work we do, the intensity of work we do, all those type of things.
And ironically, that avoidance of that work is the fueling spiritual seeking. Is the fuel for spiritual seeking, because we basically, spiritual seeking is basically an avoidance mechanism. It's not bad, it's just all we know at that point, or you could say, but it's a way to run away from this, run away from the discomfort.
Hi, my name is Kees, and today I'm with Ikraam. Ikraam, really nice to see you. I look forward to having a chat. I love our chats in general, and I think we had a lot of interesting conversations already. I want to start a little bit with this one about integration. And since you had a lot of integration and you've dealt with that a lot, I think it's interesting to maybe share a little bit, because what I know was that you had this big spiritual awakening on plant medicine. And then afterwards, you basically had to find, where are you, right? And then somewhere along that path we met, and I would love for you to tell a little bit about your journey.
Awesome. And thanks for inviting me on. Yeah, I'm super excited to do this with you.
Thank you. Me too.
Awesome. Where shall we start?
So maybe the most interesting beginning is your first touch with spirituality, because what I've seen with a lot of people, and I think we've had an interesting conversation about this as well, is that it starts early, right? It's like we maybe have this bigger awakening in, for you, I think it was your 20s, right? But somewhere along your childhood, you already were interested in spirituality, right? I don't know if you want to share about that, but that's a story that I really like.
Yeah, sure. I would say that the first story, or the earliest story that I could remember that relates to spirituality, is at least maybe self-inquiry, was maybe when I was in my early teens. I came from a religious upbringing, so there was a general inclination towards spiritual sides of Islam, so that my family was more inclined to that. But I think the most poignant, I think that's the correct memory, is every night I would ask, or I would have the thought, what is before God, or what is prior to God? Because in religion you're taught like God is the first and there's nothing before, etc. And well, you could say the problem in that point was that I believed that it was like the devil's whispers that were having me question like God or my faith or something. So I remember there was a period of like every night I used to read like prayers out of fear, because I couldn't get rid of this question. And so whatever that was, fortunate, unfortunate, it is interesting. And
I think it was in a way very fortunate, right? Because it's such a deep inquiry question. What is before God, especially if you're looking from a religious sense? Like if you do self-inquiry correctly, there's no answer to it, right? It's just a feeling. It's an exploration without any need for an answer. What is before God? That's just like already seeing that God is maybe a form in this. It's maybe the biggest form out there, but it's not really formless. You can almost have like a conversation with God if that's your thing, or if you're intuitive. But it's like formless is even bigger maybe than God. So like what's before God? It's like this, right?
Yes. And I think sort of the stepping stone towards formlessness, or towards the experience of formlessness. If I ask myself that question now, it would be thought. Thought is prior to God. So once we see that thought as its emergent form of this, then we see what it creates, or its creative power, you could say. And once you move from a objective, structured, specific idea or belief, and you step back into thought, then you level the playing field of thought. All thought is now thought. There's no like one thought can't be greater.
No, exactly. Yeah.
And once it's leveled, then you can see what is prior to thought. When you ask what is prior to thought, you can really submerge deep into that space which is not knowable. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful. I don't know why, but I feel called to share something. Before I was really into, I think you were into Rupert Spira as well, right? I was also
Yes.
into Rupert Spira, and he tends to break awareness down as a sort of personal awareness bubble, which you
Yes.
then burst because you're saying, okay, what is here and what is there? You know, it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know, because it's just something that's also in my awareness.
Right.
But it's from this personal point of view, actually. It's still from this point of view.
Yes.
And at some point, I was listening to more like radical non-duality, like Jim Newman, for example. And I started to look at that as a more scientific way of looking at things, where there's just energy. Energy is not related to a person, where awareness, it seems like it experientially is related to something.
Right.
Because
Yes.
it's a projection of the body, actually. The body is aware in a way.
Yes.
Where consciousness is of course bigger, right? And when Rupert Spira is talking about awareness, he's not really talking about the body, but sometimes that sort of mixes together in a way, where I knew for me it was bigger than that. So when I listened to this more radical stuff, it wasn't that they really said it there, but they really talked about everything and nothing. And then what clicked for me was, oh, it's just like science. It's like energy. It's everything, right? It doesn't have a point of view. It doesn't have any owner. It doesn't have any, it's the same here as there, even though it's connected, but it's also different, because this energy here is not that energy there, but it's still all energy and it's still connected in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
That broke it down a little bit less personal. And it seemed like when you talked about this thought and then going beyond thought, it's almost like energy. It's like direct perception of sensation
Yes.
without an owner, right?
Yes, exactly. It kind of puts the mind in a lock, and it isn't able to formulate what this is anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we talk about integration, to me, that integration is sometimes that the mind understands what the body, or in my sense, my intuition, is already feeling.
Sorry, please repeat that.
It's like the mind understanding what intuition or a deeper part of you has already felt.
Yes.
So when when this sort of click thingy happened for me with the whole non-localized energy field, like I just told.
Right. Yes.
It was kind of like, oh wait, that is true, because I'm already experiencing like that.
Right. Yes.
So I was just looking for the proper breakdown. Basically, that was my integration, that my mind understood, okay, this is what I'm feeling. And I'm okay with that, right? Because I get it. I get myself, sort of.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And the way I would describe how my mind got it, or loosened up, be comfortable with not knowing. I see the mind functioning through models of the world. So each sort of, as we live our lives from childhood, we build upon these models through experience and touching things and falling and relating and relationships and stuff. And on a side note, that's what we call like the trauma response is an irregular, or just a model that's not conducive to general human well-being. That's built upon, but somatically, not it's like the entire But to go back to the point, the model that seemed to open up a lot was, yes, exploration of radical non-duality was extremely useful, and then also the explorations impermanence and noticing that what I experienced as myself is completely contextual, and the context is not controlled. When I think about integration, it was an aspect of loosening what the mind thought or what the self was perceived as, and all the rigidities around that, and also feeling into experience. I think you touched on that too, where going into the preconceptual, or let me say more preconceptual layers. I don't know how much the mind is involved at any point in time, but let me say the more subtle sensations, energetics of what is being experienced, and noticing that all the heady stuff in our life, a lot of it first is more like driven by these sensations. A lot of it, it's almost like if you can convince the mind to understand that focusing attention inside the body is a more optimum way of living, and not in a world constructed of potential futures and avoiding things and things. Those are all very important, natural, emergent adaptations to the world, but realizing that they play a role, they are not the main, there isn't much useful information there. Let me say that. And once I think, I may be simplifying it a lot, but as you get more into the felt experience, be okay. You don't have to really let go of it. You just have to be okay with not knowing. There's always more that you're not knowing. Each moment brings a million new things that are not unknowable, and to be okay with that, and to live with and to feel the lack of safety or the unsafety of that in the body, and rest in that, so that the body can recalibrate to not becoming anxious or paranoid, and you could say awareness moving back into the head. I spoke a lot there.
That's beautiful.
Okay, all right.
I think what I took from that, which I think is very crucial, is I think where we started talking together, is when you were mostly also still, like, because you're very intelligent, mostly still looking for mental models to fit this on.
Yes.
And then I think what we talked about is the association. What you're just talking about right now is association with the body, right? Because we're so, in society, we're so dissociated from the body.
Exactly.
Like, I noticed that you have such a heart-based quality, this emotional and sensitive quality. Feel, right? It's like a permission slip, like, oh, okay, it's okay to feel, it's okay to be here, it's okay to be guided by the strong intuition that I have, without any mental model for how it's going to be or why that would be good.
Right. Yes.
It's like life without reasoning, almost.
Yes.
That's something which is also very strongly related with my life. I know that I wanted to, I did meditation, and it was very achievement based, mostly as a way to not look at the body, right? To not look at what's here. I wanted to get to some ideal outcome. Don't look at what's here, but look at what would be ideal. And I think that's such a, and so for a couple of years, I really couldn't make any goals or something like that, because I was so anti-goal, because they had punished me so hard. I had punished me so hard with my goals.
Yeah.
Because I was striving. And then when I had this whole awakening stuff, I realized it's about what's here. And then at some point it integrates in a way that I understood, oh, I can take what's here to a goal in a way that's aligned, that feels good, by doing something which makes sense. Let's say I have natural inspiration to be fit, and I have natural inspiration to exercise. So when I exercise, I get fit. So it's in alignment.
Yes.
But then before when I would even think about, let's say, fitness, there would be this big forcing power online. And I was already like, no, I don't want to live in this forced energy, right? Like first creating a home for yourself here where you like yourself right now and you can live with yourself right now. That's so much more important.
Yes, definitely.
And then when you talked about the context, there's this children movie. I don't know. It's called Vaiana. Maybe you've seen it. It's like a beautiful movie. And at some point, the grandmother, the wise grandmother, comes back as a sort of ghost to tell Vaiana about her coming journey. And she says, I do not know how your fate or what's going to happen, but you can always decide who you are. And that's sort of what stuck with me. Yes, the context in a way of your life is just happening, right? We could say
yes.
Like the relationships, the work stuff, the responsibilities, or whatever, the body. It's just happening. But then we can decide how we interpret it. What's happening, and that interpretation, which is also, of course, in a way naturally arising, but that interpretation is coming from this deep part, the source already. And that's almost stronger than the context, I feel. It's almost like the context coming online, but then we paint it automatically in the color we like. So when we paint it yellow, it doesn't really feel bad anymore, right? It's almost like a recontextualization with your perspective,
yes.
with your interpretation. And I don't know, that I was about 12 or something like that. And I really remember this moment. And because I was observing grown-ups all the time, I was fascinated with grown-ups my entire childhood. I wanted to play or speak more with grown-ups than with children my age. And the fascinating thing which I picked up was it's all about perspective. Everything is about perspective. How grown-ups talk is just them reinforcing their perspective. And so it's not really about what happens, but it's about your perspective, I would say.
Yes. Yes, 100%. The inner world has, you could say, the largest influence on how we experience life. Yeah, definitely.
I want you to ask you a question. Like you had this beautiful ceremony, right? And you had deep spiritual insights there. Maybe you want to tell us a little bit about what you picked up there and how was it for you to try to integrate that?
With the plant medicine?
Yeah.
So I just found myself there. I decided to accompany my wife. I guess I didn't know. I was a bit fearful back then, and I wanted to be close to her. And also, I was obviously interested in the experience. So yeah, it was a lovely environment. I didn't even know what ego death was, or I wasn't aware of all of these things. But in retrospect, I know before the ceremony, the shaman mentioned something about maybe experience ego death, and I remember that after the ceremony. But anyway, to get into it, the first night was wonderful. I had just started reading Alan Watts, and it's almost like whatever was in my consciousness at that point of time was experienced myself as the Ouroboros, the snake eating itself, sort of this like complete unity, and myself as everything, and like the entire existence, all the good, all the bad, was this little girl spinning around and sort of creating with her hands as she was spinning. You know, those when you fold paper and cut it into these little men, and then those were around her, spinning around her. It was kind of like, I'm not sure if you remember the Matilda scene, in the movie Matilda, when she's making all the things spin around her. It kind of had that vibe, and kind of like that was like the whole universe is type of play. That's like the message. So that was beautiful. Somatically, I was moving in and out of visualization of the visions, and being on the bed was I was feeling like throwing up the whole time. So every time I was like back in my body, you could say, aware of my body, I felt like throwing up or feeling really sick. The second night was the complete opposite, though. Prior to the second night, the whole day I had this massively inflated ego. I knew everything. I'm like, God incarnate type of whole and it was so odd. Like it felt like intrusive thoughts, because it was like, I don't think this way. It's usually I think, but it was just so much arrogance exuding from my being, you could say.
It's a sort of personalization of God, almost like I am God, right?
Exactly. And even though everyone's God, but I know that I'm God. So it was like
exactly. Everything's God, but I am God. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
And I think it's just the way the ego adapts new information. There's all stories are believed as true at that point, and even though there was awareness that it was just like vision under hallucinogenic or plant medicine, it was interpreted as I'm the shit. I'm I'm the greatest thing on earth right now, because I know things.
I've seen it all.
You say yes, exactly. So the second night was such a crash from that. It just felt like, so in Islamic stories, there's I think it's also biblical to parts of it, but I think this one is mainly Islamic, where the devil defied God and said he's gonna like cause mischief on the earth. That just before that happened, God asked him to bow down to Adam, because Adam was like the more premium creation, the higher creation, because for whatever reasons, and he refused to. He's like, no, I'm better. So what is interesting was that in that I was switching roles between God and devil in there, but towards the end, but I think it was mainly, I think the second I mainly the experience of being the devil and sort of refusing to surrender to God. And then there was like this felt like infinite experience of suffering. That's how I remember it. I remember having thoughts as I was moving in and out that I wouldn't wish this even on the worst of humans. That's what it felt like. And eventually surrendering wanted to happen, but it was not happening. Eventually it happened. But I mean, I say all of these things, it's just plant medicine brings up whatever's in the subconscious, right? Whatever is learned, and it gives insights based on that, because those are the metaphors the person understands. But it took me a few months to understand that fully, that these are just experiences like any experience. So it took me like a good few weeks where I was pretty disorientated, because when the ceremony ended, I was like super disorientated. I remember my wife helping me eat, because I couldn't do it, and I thought I'd never be able to program again, do software. I thought I'll just be a bum on the streets. I was like, okay, this is just my life, just zoned out. Eventually, after a few hours, I was back to normal, you could say. Yeah, so that was that, I guess.
And then groceries, right? The next day.
Yeah.
or sort of, you were disoriented, but something was already started, because the first night you had definitely an awakening experience, right?
Yeah. I think one would
personal, right?
Yes, exactly. And then
so the ego wasn't destroyed because it was taken this as bliss.
Exactly.
Because if there's nothing to own it wouldn't feel excited about it, right? It's just
exactly.
Like, if it's true ego death and there's nothing to claim it's like, right? There's no because the bliss or dark night of the soul are just both two reactions of the same thing, of conditioning breaking down.
Yes, exactly. So the first night was just spiritual ego, I think, but there were some insights about unity and oneness. That was important. The second night was around surrender, and that, I guess it was around surrender to what is, and
and also acceptance of suffering, I think, right?
Yes, there was acceptance of suffering as well.
Because that's been a theme in your life, right? Wanting to not. This definitely been a theme in my life, right? Wanting to try to prevent people from suffering.
Oh yeah, that's been big. Wanting to avoid it myself and prevent it because it felt unsafe, especially when I perceived myself as the cause of it, or perceived myself as someone responsible for it. Let me say that.
Yeah. So, and then did you continue your Alan Watts, or what book, or what happened in like the 2-3 years after?
I got deep into spirituality in general. There was also someone who I think was awake, but more in the space of spiritual ego, but not as much as but I think still. So he helped me move through some of this just by talking to him, and let me say, not deeper realization. I was definitely awake, but I think there was a lot of trauma and conditioning and all the stuff that was mixed up. So it wasn't very clear, but I learned from him quite a bit in general. And then I ended up watching Rupert Spira and Francis Lucille. I think that's how I say his name. And non-duality reading and watching videos, and Eckhart Tolle. I read Eckhart Tolle's work. The spiritual work prior to no self. A lot of that space, a lot of the spiritual understanding in that space, but a lot of it lacked, or I was just obsessed with this, but it was only later on that I realized that trauma work is also extremely important in this process. And it was a general pursuit of the end of suffering. I think that's a natural spiritual seeker experience. So that was the driving force. But it's only much later where I started doing more deeper inquiry and into the human aspect, which actually plays a huge factor in our today experience, much more than the spiritual seeker mind would imagines. It kind of imagines that if I just get this, understand this, it's all like peace and bliss or calm forever. Anyway,
I think there's a part of seekers which understands after spiritual awakening, okay, what's left is just shadow work, and that's what's most important, is to be with this and then shadow work. But there's another part of people that want to go beyond the human, that just say, oh, give me insight.
That was
but
me.
Don't go transform this human. I don't care about the human. I want to go beyond this character. I want to go beyond the personality. And sad to say, that doesn't work. Right? So you have to, at some point, yes, insight can be tremendously beautiful and inspiring, and also click on all fronts, like we just said. Like, so for the mind to understand this while at the same time living it is a super powerful thing. But then often the way, the thing that's in the way to truly perceiving this permanently is just, the nitty gritty stuff of the relationship with our parents, or this healing, that's actually in the way. And our normal day-to-day relationships, or our alignment in our day-to-day actions, how we talk to our children, how we do at work, the type of work we do, the intensity of work we do, all those type of things.
And ironically, that avoidance of that work is the fueling spiritual seeking, is the fuel for
Yes.
spiritual seeking, because we basically, spiritual seeking is basically an avoidance mechanism. It's not bad, it's just all we know at that point, or you could say, but it's a way to run away from this, run away from the discomfort. And for me, it's still going on. I'm learning to set boundaries better. I'm learning, and even, but it's from Zen Buddhism, I believe, it's to know the self is to forget the self. And so that means you have to really know the self, know every, let me say, you don't have to know it, but you have to be comfortable with whatever comes up, and be willing to work with it, to look at it. Let me say it that way.
Yeah.
Because if you avoid it, you are not knowing the self, and you will never be able to forget the self, because everything is going to be fueled from the selfing mechanism, because that's being avoided. So yeah, ironically, yeah, anyway.
It's a form of seeking, right? It's like, that's what you said is beautiful. In a way, seeking is avoidance. And I realized this at some point when I was like on the couch, I don't know, 3.5 years of YouTube in, and some meditation in between, is that I was just avoiding the real work, because the work was freaking painful. It was just stupidly painful to sit with my shit.
Yeah.
And I didn't really have the tools to deal with myself.
Yes.
Right? So
yes.
At some point I was kind of stuck. Like, I understand this, I've seen it, I see it in my daily life, yet I'm still not where I want to be. And I know that this is possible. That's also, it's not really a want to be as a sort of goal. It was like, I knew it was possible to transform. I think that's the part of seeking that we maybe discredit then, is saying, oh, seeking is amazing because it keeps this opportunity which you have alive. But then that seeking should be ideally used to turn inward instead of only to the books and the videos and things like that, which is again great, but
yeah. And it's the type of thing that if you have sort of the right teachers or right support and right or insight practices that can help you become move awareness into the body instead of away into the head or and ideas and concepts and models, it can help you move faster. But in a way, it's part of it is becoming exhausted with it. The seeking needs to exhaust itself to see that it's not working, because there's always this belief that just one more hit, just this one more hit, and I'll be there.
Well, yeah. So when you've had, just to add to you, when you've had an awakening, it's like there's a part of you that already understands it, and that part of you, that, let's say, that deeper part of you that understands it, that will always understand it from this moment. But then there's this sort of mental understanding which we try to parallel it with, and that mind that can't figure it out. It can never figure it out in a way.
Yeah,
so it's trying to, you want to complete this in a way by holding this awakening. Why it's like it's formless. How can you hold something that's formless?
Exactly. And it is available, not as in, I get that when you are the seeking, you could say when you are seeking, you are unable to access it, but it's accessible. And I would say that you felt it before. So you know what you're striving towards, more or less, not exactly. And that's what keeps it going. It's like you felt something and you know you want to get back there. You just don't know how. And the mind will look for strategies. And it takes a while to realize that the mind can't get you there, in the way it believes it can get you there. The mind is also, right, it's a portal. When self-inquiry, when you start when it starts questioning itself, then can dissolve itself. So it's not that the mind is not necessary, but what the mind thinks it needs to do to get there tends to be the misdirection.
Energy, and I break everything down into energy, emotion, and thought. And then thought is a great pointer at energy and emotion.
Mm.
But
Yes.
then it doesn't really have a lot more. It's just like a great pointer. And at some point, we just need to look deeper and drop the thoughts. And then energy and emotion, they can only dissolve when we feel them.
Mhm.
So this is something in my own evolution as a coach. I know that I'm spending a lot of time with people that have some sort of energetic resistance to something, and feeling that, instead of which is the total cure to resistance. Feel it without needing to do anything about it. That is the opposite of resistance. It's like full acceptance, no need to go somewhere. And then we're sensitive people, and everybody usually in this process is some sort of sensitive person that is able to sense energy. Maybe every person has this, but let's say especially people that have some sort of deep realization or some sort of spiritual awakening, they understand, okay, I can feel other people's energy. And because we maybe as a kid, we don't like what we feel, we just avoid it or resist it or try to work with it or try to do something. And we get into this habit of reactivity. And when we're in this habit of reactivity, we can't really function well, right? It's something that's as a deep level sticking point, which I see with a lot of people, is this reactivity. Just basic resistance to what I feel with other people.
Yes.
And I've been working with a lot of people sitting with the thought of their coworker, the thought of their parents, the thought of their partner, and just feeling that resistance. And it melts away. It's been really beautiful. Because we think like, oh, it's them, I don't like that person. No, this energy, you resist this energy. And that is taking so much energy, actually, for you to resist it while it's still here.
Yes.
So if you change your attitude, wow, that's a big thing.
And like you mentioned, it could be on you could say that the fixation or the stuckness can be in the thought, which usually is a process of changing the viewpoint or the angle, or in the feeling, fully experiencing the feeling, no resistance, and then in the sort of sensation or maybe energetics level, it's, I think what I was trying to get to is, well, at least in my experience, much more than I thought, the energetics of a sensation side of things was the major influence in my reactivity. It was the deep, like, I don't like this, what's happening. Or it could be like a space of observing the body, you could say overstimulated. I think there's this sort of spoons model where you sort of have a certain amount of capacity that the body can handle in terms of activation, like unsafety. And so basically certain experiences of people or whatever are somatically interpreted, not mentally. They could be mentally, and you could be feeling fully and you're okay with that, but just the feeling low level biological. Once that type kind of fills up, it gets to the mental and emotional spaces, and then reactivity starts from that point. So I think what I'm getting down to is becoming aware of how the body is responding in the current context is very helpful, because one maybe can set boundaries, etc. Because there's something that the body is communicating about its own experience. Not that it's true or untrue, just that its own experience. And sometimes you have to move the body away from that situation or help it become safe. It's almost, you could say it's like the inner child or whatever, very, very preconceptual experience that you could say is the body's communication. Before I became aware of that, everything was either in the feeling or in the mental space, and it just reacted. That the reactivity came from there.
I understand what you mean.
Yeah, understandable.
It's when we feel or acknowledge this sensitivity with everything in a way.
Yeah.
We start to understand how, or try to look at how can we be with this without being reactive, right? How can we be with this in a nice way? And simple example is after spiritual awakening, I started to be aware of my stomach always being bloated, and the whole system didn't feel good, and my gut didn't feel good, and I started to go on these different diets to try to see if is it this, is it that. At some point I found, okay, I'm gluten intolerant, and that changed my life. Really, it was a big my gluten awakening. No, but so it's similar to, I hear a lot of people talk about boundaries, and I think that's very much related to becoming sensitive of what you're not doing.
Yes.
And then when you're sensitive of what you're not doing, it's kind of like being with that without needing to force yourself to do something. Because when we're overrun our entire life with different energies or what we feel with other people, it's sort of natural to feel this movement to want to get them out of our field. But actually, the way to work with it is to be okay that they're in our field.
Yes.
And then naturally, it sort of flows through you. And then it makes very much sense to understand, okay, this is what I want. Although that energy is spent, let's say this is a theme I've seen with a lot of people in the last months, is that a lot of energy is spent in this reactivity. And that reactivity could be, let's say, a healthy boundary, but then it's still coming from a place of, I need to react to people entering my space.
Reactivity often starts with a misperception of something else at fault. Like there's I don't like what's happening.
That's great. I think that's super essential what you're just saying, because that's the basic stance, is I don't like this.
Yes.
So that's a moving away. It's an avoidance of the energy. And because there's an avoidance of energy, there's this thought of, I need to protect myself from this, instead of I need to just accept this energy.
Yes, exactly. And one thing that I noticed as I'm working through this process is that the reactivity itself also needs to be seen as part of this. Because what happens is, if one gets fixated on reactivity bad, then one starts to take positions of, no, I should stay here longer. No, I should listen to this. I should do this. So like you get into a sort of headspace instead of remaining in the somatic space. And sometimes remaining in the somatic space means that you do move away from the situation, or you do say something. But when it's heard, you could say when the body is heard, you're able to set boundaries without, or say what you need to say without the insistence that it should occur to that way. It's just like it's almost being true to what is present here, and without really a fixation on the outcome. I think that's what I'm pointing at.
I think I started this work also because I don't really believe in behavioral change. I don't really believe that you mentally force yourself to change your behavior. Because it's going against the grain fully. So there's something in the way of having natural boundaries, for example. Or there's something in the way of having a natural relationship with your coworker or with your boss or something like that. And when there's something in the way, then you can, of course, brute force your way and think about, okay, what's smart, and then let's do that. Which every self-help personal coach would say. But I believe that costs way too much energy. And that's very much situational based. That's like this situation, and then the next situation will cost you a lot of energy again. And it's also saying, I'm like this. And just not true. There's just this basic thing which is in the way. And then I've seen like almost the deepest level is just energy reactivity. But it could also mean that you've had this situation before, and then there's interpretations of you being bad in some way, or that you're just, let's say, maybe somebody gaslit you in a way where you think that you're bad if you set a boundary or something like that. Let's say there's just some healing in the way. And I've seen that in my own life, that everything that was suboptimal can be corrected in this way. And that doesn't mean like my health or something like that, but everything that's mentally, energetically, emotional related, everything like that can just be balanced out by finding the thing that's in the way. And that doesn't make you happy, by the way, that makes you neutral, right? Yeah. That's good to say, because another theme I'm exploring personally is just this non-duality doesn't make you happy. It makes you neutral.
Yes.
It makes you understand what's this, but it's actually a deconstruction of absolutely everything, including happiness.
Yes, 100%. Yes.
So I've realized that I like happiness.
Yes.
And I don't need to deconstruct it every time it happens.
Oh yeah, good. I mean that's as radical as you can get, because there's nothing wrong with it when it's happening, right? It's just happening.
Yeah. But if you're really like a meditation nerd, like I am, there's like this mindfulness stuff. First of all, then at some point when you're just mindful in general, you take all these different inputs, so you can sit with your boss or sit with your parents or sit with this situation, sit with that situation. And it helps like tremendously. But at some point you're so good at this deconstruction that there's nothing left but the truth, or you could say the truth, right? But this again and again and again. And that's beautiful. In a way, it's joyful, in a way that it's like a subtle joy.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's still this need or this feeling of, I look at life through deconstruction.
Right.
In a way,
yes.
Right? Which is what in non-duality, we kind of train people to do that.
Yes. Right.
Well, it's more than valid to just be happy. Right? And allow happiness. We can deconstruct maybe things that don't really feel good for us, but we can be with or train ourselves to be okay or with tolerating happiness and good feelings.
And for whatever reason, we're inclined towards the good feeling and the bad and avoiding the bad feeling. And I suppose we seek our way into learning deconstruction in order that we reduce suffering, because the human being just wants to avoid suffering. So when there's happiness, as long as that happiness isn't resulting in some sort of suffering, which we will know, and then we'll realize it. But it's just how the human operates, right? The human just likes happiness, and so what?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I even feel it almost like we had before with like the felt sense. For me, after no self and some integration of that, it was very clear, like, I don't think there's mental suffering. There's still some suffering. There's still some deconstruction. There's still some things coming up sometimes. But, I don't really suffer over that. And I want to still look at it, but it's not really causing any suffering.
Mm.
And then there was also this natural recognition after like no self. This is definitely not happiness too. This is clarity. But then that clarity is like, what are we going to allow in that clarity? And when we just continue to stop everything we've been trained in a way,
yes,
then we don't allow happiness to flow, or we don't allow inspiration to flow, or we don't allow goals or all the things that actually maybe give us a nice way to live. We disallow our humanness, we could say, in that sense. Yeah. That's what
Right.
you were pointing to as well. Yeah.
And that's also okay, because our inclinations and our habits and patterns, not to take away responsibility from them, but they're just there. And if they exhaust, if it's almost like deconstructing can exhaust itself in a way.
Yeah.
And that's that. Yeah.
That's just really beautiful, my friends. And I would say I want to end with maybe a Sadhguru quote. And he said, at some point, you just realize that being human is super. You don't need to become a superhuman, right?
Right.
At some point, we realize just being human, that's super. The body and doing this.
Just this experience and everything that appears, everything that experience is just super. And I think the categorization is really important. I think there's in philosophy, there's I can't remember what it's called, but it's a categorization fallacy where we try to compare apples with pears. So when we say being human is super, we're talking about apples. When we talk about their suffering or deconstruction, we're talking about pears. And we conflate the two until you could say until the deconstruction and insight happens long enough to be able to split the two. Being human is super, and there's suffering and happiness and all the good things and the bad things and chaos and love and family and solo adventuring and all of that, whatever's there. And they both are true. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, yeah, that's great. The end of suffering is not, let's say, it's still the continuation of life, right? And then still, like, let's interpret it in a happy way and make it a happy life or a super life in that sense, right?
Yeah, make it feel good, because that's what the human being is inclined towards. And along with that is all beautiful things of like morality and do good to your neighbor, and all of that is included in like a holistic human experience.
Yeah.
And that all can be pursued and refined and explored, even though we may live in a dream like reality. The dream is still affected by those things, and to deny that what's appearing. And that, in a way, the only reason one would deny it, at least from my experience, is because there's a discomfort with it. What's uncomfortable that you want to deny what's appearing, right? Yeah.
So beautiful. And what came up for me is like, there's no need to do anything, but then you still want to do something, right? You still want to maybe help your neighbors, or you still want to make a video, or you still want to, work, or you still want to take care of your children or your parents or whatever. So yeah, that continues. But you don't need to do it, right? But it's just for fun. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much. I'll say bye.
Okay. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.